Hello and welcome to another episode of Total Space Podcast. Today we are taking a deep dive into animation. My name is Mikko and I regularly host Deep Dive Fridays. We have a few special guests today with us, but first I'll let the other hosts introduce themselves. And I'll hand over to AnotherSpaceNut.
Hi guys, I'm AnotherSpaceNut, a regular voice at Total Space. I'll hand over to Rich.
Hi everybody, I'm Rich, host of Becoming Multiplanetary Mondays. I'd just like to welcome Caspar Stanley, ErcXspace, Eric, and Nick Henning here this week. Really happy to have you all here. Starting with Caspar and working my way down, could you guys take a couple of minutes and introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Caspar Stanley, and I'm Stanley Creative. I have been posting some renders and animations on Twitter and YouTube for the past year, I think. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Eric, ErcXspace on Twitter. I have been posting some Starship animations and images for the past couple of months now, and also been featured on the What About It show as well.
Hi guys, thanks for having me today. My name is Nick Henning. I'm found at Nick Henning 3D pretty much everywhere on the internet, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. I've been doing 3D animation for about 15 years now. Space fan my entire life, and recently, about a year now, I've been doing some animation for What About It, and any freelance work that's out there.
Great. So we've all been amazed how realistic renders you guys make, but I'm quite interested in how the magic actually happens. Some background. We all met through What About It. I'm curious, how did you get into the animation? Would you like to go first, Caspar?
I think it started about 7 or 8 years ago when I wanted to make a mod for Kerbal Space Program, and I sort of modeled some fuel tanks and some boosters, and that's how I got into 3D modeling and also some programming and stuff for making that mod. And then it sort of just developed into a hobby and now my job, and it's amazing.
Awesome, great to hear. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, it started in May, I think. Once COVID hit, I got less work hours, so I had a lot of free time. I've always wanted to do 3D animations and wanted to learn how it's done, but at that time I had no clue how it worked. So I started doing some tutorials, and then eventually I started modeling the Starlink antenna dish and got it onto Yeshu and Sebastian's YouTube channel and What About It, and then it just continued. I guess I've been doing it for half a year now, and I'm continuously learning how to do it as I go.
That's amazing, if I can say.
Thank you.
Glad to hear it, and very glad you actually decided to start doing those renders.
Thank you so much, Mikko.
How about you, Nick?
Wow, that's incredible. You've done that so much in so little time. Well, I've been doing it for quite a while. I actually started on the engineering side. When I was in high school, I got pretty deep into engineering classes and started using AutoCAD for building cars and things like that, and then discovered 3D Studio through that, and then it was a lot more freedom to be more artistically an animator. Dabbled in that for a while, but then I kind of fell out of it. Started working full-time, and I never did 3D for a while until about 4 years ago. I quit my full-time job and went back to school for 3D, or actually for film school. Finished that and been looking for work ever since, but then started doing some Starship animations, things that I was just really, really interested in, and then What About It caught the eye of them, and they started working with them. And then just anything that I've been interested in ever since then. Starship has just been a really fun thing to work on. People really enjoy looking at it and seeing every little detail about it, so I put a lot of effort into that just because people enjoy it.
That's awesome, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, guys. Really, thank you for making the experience for all of us. Thank you from the community.
Thank you, guys.
Well, you're very welcome. I really enjoy it.
Not many people know, I actually have a background in games development. I'm actually a programmer, specifically. However, this does entitle me to know a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes, so I've got a really good question for the three of you. My question to the three of you is this. From start to finish in creating and animating a scene, what is your favorite part? Now, what I mean by this is your favorite part the actual designing of the model, and then from there, we've got the unwrapping and the normal mapping, if you do any of that. And then you've got the rigging, boning, and the final render process and stuff. So for each one of you, which part of that process is your favorite part to do?
Well, that's a good question. So I like to consider myself a generalist, so I like to do a little bit of all of it, but I have to focus into one area. I would have to say modeling. The designs are pretty much out there already since we're doing so much Starship work, but I really like to get in there and do modeling, and I'm a kind of perfectionist on the modeling. I have to have everything clean, so like you would know that it has to be able to go into a game engine. I'm always big on that, just in case. Yeah, I do not like the unwrapping. I am sure you guys would agree with that. But yeah, unwrapping and texturing is my favorite. But it does give you a really nice look, and that finishes final quality, what people see. So it is important. But I'd say I'm a modeling guy. I like to get in there and put that wireframe and get things nice and crisp.
Nice. That's actually really good. My own modeler in my team, he hated the unwrap process, and he showed what it was like. And I'm like, yeah, good luck with that, buddy. So yeah, Eric, your turn.
Yeah, I'd have to say modeling as well. During the past month, I don't know if you saw the Starship animation I put out, but that was basically a whole month of just rendering and setting up scenes. So I was really eager to get back to modeling. And it's fun once the model is done to set it up in a scene and start making some images with it. But it can be really rough with the UV unwrapping and the texturing. So I would say I enjoy the modeling the most, yeah.
Okay, so we're 2 for 2 on modeling. Caspar?
Yeah, I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but modeling is great, and I hate UV unwrapping. Yeah, it's just adding all the little details and the actual parts of the rockets, and yeah, the model is very fun, and you can see it comes alive, and then sort of unwrapping that down to a 2D sheet so you can add textures and stuff. It's a mess. It's really interesting to hear that, Nick, that you want to make your models capable to go into like a 3D or like a game, because obviously that's exactly what I'm doing, because all of my models, they go into my game thing called Rocket Explorer, and at the same time as they have to be good for renders, they have to be capable to still be in a game and be performance and stuff.
And can you expand a bit more on Rocket Explorer for the listeners, Caspar? I've been privy enough to sort of see the process develop over time, but I'm sure some people listening might not have heard of Rocket Explorer before. Can you expand a little bit on that for us?
Yeah, sure. I don't want this to be like an ad or anything, but for the past year, that's actually why I started making rockets as a thing that I do, because I live in Denmark, so I can't just go see rockets. And when I bought a used VR headset a year ago, I just thought I have to make something so I can see a rocket in VR and see how big it actually is. And then I started modeling the New Shepard rocket and the Electron because they're quite small. And then it just evolved into making bigger and bigger rockets. I didn't want to ruin the experience to begin with, so that's why I made a small rocket to begin with. And then it evolved into this application/game that I have now called Rocket Explorer. Yeah, it's just a thing where you can view rockets and compare them to each other and see all the intricate details, and you can launch them. And obviously it's still in VR, but you can also have it in non-VR. So you can just use it on your PC or Mac or anything like that. Yeah, that's the thing.
Thank you, Caspar.
Thanks for letting me talk about it.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of trailers on that game, and it does look quite awesome.
Yes, congratulations on getting on Steam there too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a wild ride.
Yeah. I've tried to model something, but that came out quite horrible, and even that took a lot of time. I learned how to use Blender. I'm interested, how much does your project take and what apps do you use?
Oh, I'll start with that one. That can depend a lot. My main modeling program I use is Maya. The reason I use that is because when I started using it, trying to get professionally, that was what was in the industry. That's what people were using, which is now, unfortunately for me, but fortunately for a lot of other people, switching over to Blender. It's pretty powerful and it's a pretty good price to it, free. So I use Maya. Depending on the project, my longest modeling project ever was Serenity from the Firefly movies, and that was about 6 months of work. 4 of that was unwrapping. 2 months of unwrapping. About 4 months of actually modeling, but that was my biggest project. But I have had projects that I've finished in a day, just tiny little things. So it really just depends on the quality and what we want to get out of the outcome of it.
Yeah, 6 months is quite a bit of time to work on a project.
Yeah, and I was doing that as if I was working in a studio, so I was trying not to work more than maybe 6 to 8 hours a day, but keeping it like 6 hours a day just working on that same project. It was pretty good. I think I got up 17 million polygons on that one, so not quite ready for a game.
Nope.
I remember seeing that. It was a really, really cool model. You rendered it in in Boca Chica or something, right?
That's right, I did. One of the aerial photography photos was a perfect shot of the landing pad empty, and so I was able to composite that landed over there. I did a little fun thing of him go back in time to see where it all started.
Yeah, that was really, really cool. I love Firefly, so it's amazing.
Thank you. That image is actually, I just looked over the background to my desktop now.
Nice.
You were saying about that clean shot there, Nick. Have you thought about doing like a time lapse, right, from sort of SpaceX buying it right through to where it's at now and just condensing it down in an Apple style video? You know, like a big, like, long time lapse, or any of you guys really, because I think that'd be quite cool.
A time lapse of the Boca Chica area?
Yeah, like the orbital launch facility that they've got down in Boca Chica. If you were to just put like an entire history of that dirt hill turning into what it is and then condense it down into 40-second sort of real flick through, so you could see from you could maybe transition hopping midair into SN5 and stuff like that.
That's a really good idea. It could have like a camera pan like you see with a real film quick lapse, but then they could kind of fake it with animation and kind of build everything up really fast and have the test articles come in and go out really fast and blow up or succeed. And that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're better at explaining that than me.
I can see it in my head right now.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that either. That's a really cool idea. I think you should do that.
Sounds like that might be a collaboration project, because even though I got a lot of the parts, that's still a lot of modeling to do.
Yeah, that's a big one. And even if you were to do the thing where you move the test articles out and back again, yeah, that would be a big one.
We all know all three of you like modeling now, so I'm going to cycle it back to that real quick. Let's talk poly counts. For the three of you, what kind of poly counts do your starships end up coming out at?
I actually have no idea. A couple of 100,000, I think. I use a lot of subdivision surfaces, which adds to it, but I have no idea what my current model has.
Yeah, no, I have to second that. I have absolutely no idea. And I feel like it also changes a lot, because I do have the fixed current Starship, the official final version, and then I have a lot of prototypes and stuff like that. And I think the prototypes are a lot worse than the one that I actually put in Rocket Explorer.
Yeah, same here. I've got a couple different versions. I have one version that I have every ring separately modeled with the inside as well as the outside, so it's a full 3D object, and then I can use that for stacking and building. That's up to about 250,000 polys for the entire ship together, but then my exterior shots for just the ship only, that one's down to about under 100,000 polys for that. It's actually pretty low.
Okay, I thought that at least Nick and Caspar, you two might have had something, because you guys spoke earlier about putting your objects into game engines. Now, I know that game engines I'm pretty sure they have a soft limit on poly count when you're pulling in models.
It all depends on what you want to get out of performance. If you just had one super high poly starship in there and that you were just walking around the exterior of, and there really wasn't any more environment, you could get away with quite a lot. But if you had it interacting dynamically with and other stuff in that app or game, then you'd want to get a little lower. The lower the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really not a big problem yet. What's more important, I feel like, in my experience, it has been materials and a lot of repeat objects and a lot of small objects, and not so much the actual poly count of the different models. Because game engines now can do a lot of fancy tricks where they hide models when you're not looking at them and such. So yeah, it's really not too big of a concern in my experience.
Okay. And starting from Caspar, working our way down, I know some of you do animations there. Do you animate within the modeling engine, or do you export that to a game engine prior to animation?
I render in Blender and in the Eevee renderer engine because I think it's really, really fast, and I think it just looks a lot better than I think it would if I were to do it in a separate engine like Unity or something where I have Rocket Explorer. And it's just easier to animate and render the stuff in the same engine. And you can do a lot of other things like clouds and water. I think it's pretty easy to just keep it all in the same project.
Okay, same to Eric?
Yeah, I mainly use Blender as the rendering engine as well. I use Cycles, and it takes a lot longer than Eevee rendering. Some frames takes 7 to 10 minutes per frame, but I think keyframing and setting up the scene is much easier in Blender when you use the same model in the animation part as well as the modeling part.
And Nick, your answer?
So yeah, my rendering process is pretty similar. I like to keep in the program that I model it as much as possible, which is Maya for me. I render out with the Arnold renderer, which is a pretty good little renderer. It does take quite a while though, especially when doing fluids. I've had some take up 45 minutes a frame for when I'm doing smokes and stuff, so that's why I try to avoid that. So yeah, I'll do the modeling in there, the animating in Maya, and then I render it out. I like to do my render outs individual PNG files, so each frame is a file that I put together in After Effects. That way, if anything messes up, I just can replace that little chunk and the whole animation. Yeah, I'd like to keep it pretty streamlined and all together if possible.
Yeah, because I render in Eevee, my frames take like maximum like a second if it's not too complicated of a scene. I cannot understand that you guys render in anything else. I could not work with Cycles or anything else.
You get really good results with it too.
That is true. But I don't think what I do would be possible if not for Eevee. It would just take too long.
Yeah, 1 second rendering would be amazing, actually. Sometimes I have been starting to collaborate with Small Stars, and he has 2 computers, and I have my 1 computer. So we can usually do about double or 3 times the speed of what it would take with just the 1 computer. So that's how I solved it during the last month. But it's pretty rough, and I for sure want to do it in Eevee as well. But my model doesn't look at all the same as it does in Cycles. So I'd have to make a new model optimized for Eevee rendering, if so.
Yeah, that's a thing that can happen. Is for renders, you'll get a lot different outcomes that you didn't expect.
One of the things that Cycles does that's really interesting, it's the realistic lighting, right? It actually calculates where the light will bounce off, and that creates the consistent good results. Whereas the Eevee that I use, it's sort of an approximation, which causes me to have to do some tricks here and there to make it seem like it's real.
Yeah, just rendering in plain Eevee might sometimes look like just from a game, so you have to do some tricks to make it look good. While Cycles takes a long time, I think it looks much more realistic per frame.
I noticed a few of you guys were mentioned by Elon on Twitter. You know, he's giving you quite some good feedback. Do you feel that's impacted in some of the sleepless nights, some of the extra work that you've had to do to make it right? I know at least Nick said he was a perfectionist. Do you get sleepless nights sometimes when you get a response from somebody like Elon that's giving you credible things to work with?
Well, it definitely motivates you. You get the all-elusive response from Elon. I'll have to say from personal experience, just my recent animation is the first time he's ever said anything about mine, which was really cool. Even though he was correcting me, sure got me to going because now I'm fixing that as we speak. So those sleepless nights are more of, I got to get more work done. I gotta tweak this. I got to get this just perfect. And I think him being on there and him being the CEO that he is, which is different than pretty much everybody else, he's willing to engage with his fans, if you want to call them that, or people that are just excited about space. I think that really motivates a lot of people out there.
How about you, Eric? You've gotten quite a few responses from Elon.
Yeah, his favorite fan.
Yeah, it's pretty insane, actually. But I have to say that you kind of get used to it. You know, in the beginning, it was sort of a shock checking Twitter and seeing that he actually wrote something. But now it's more of a, roulette or jackpot once it does. And as Nick said, if he gives any criticism, I'm pretty quick to adjust it.
And how about you, Caspar?
Yeah, I can't answer this question because he hasn't commented on mine. So I'm basically talking to 2 celebrities here.
But I think you're the icon of the group. I've sort of been following you on Twitter for as long as I've been on Twitter. I think you were like 2nd or 3rd person I followed on Twitter even. So I think these guys would consider you the celebrity maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Caspar is the main guy, yeah.
That's okay. I don't know what to say to that. I guess I've just been doing it for a couple of months longer than you guys. But I know, Eric, you have a lot more followers than I do, so that's my metric.
Well, it's all about posting quite frequently and just doing what you want to see yourself. So if I want to see Starship dock to the ISS, I just spend some time and make it. And people usually like it, so I'm happy that they do.
100%. I really enjoy what you do too.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
How does it feel when your renderings are featured weekly on YouTube shows like What About It, Everyday Astronaut, Marcus House?
I would actually say that is a bigger deal for me than the Twitter engagements. I know I have quite a few followers and quite a lot of engagement on Twitter, but it's a big honor to be able to be featured on What About It and Marcus House and Everyday Astronauts videos. So that's really the big thing for me, actually.
Yeah, I'll have to agree. It's been a real honor to be able to work with Felix, What About It, and Tim Dodd, of course, with Everyday Astronaut. That is really what keeps me going, and that's just really cool because Tim, Everyday Astronaut, is what really got me into rockets and space. So it is quite weird to be able to do stuff for his videos, and it's surreal.
Totally. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, that kind of where it kind of all started. I watched Felix for quite a while. I really got into What About It when he went down to Boca Chica during his live streams down there. It was just so cool to see it live. I know it was like, oh, that's there right now. So I really got into that. Got into doing the Discord with him and stuff, and then he got interested in putting the animations up, and of course I was like, oh yeah, please. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people are going to get to see it. So that's really cool. I kind of work exclusively with him, so not many other people use much of my work on their other channels. But yeah, just getting it out there, more people to see it, the better. It's just so fun to do.
Awesome. Then a fun question. A lot of fans, especially in What About It Discord, think that Starship looks like a penguin. How about you guys?
Where did that come from? Was it the wings?
It was the wings, and when it got frosty as well, when it got a white paint job, I don't think help matters.
Okay, I guess I'll have to do a penguin version.
It's been on my list for a while to do. It doesn't look quite as much like a penguin with the nose going on, but it's a tall penguin with some upper wings.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got Susie from our fan club saying it was the wings that gave it the pronoun of penguin. Oh, she created the monster. It was Susie that did it.
Yeah, I think she started it.
Yeah, she did.
And it's fitting.
Susie, you monster.
Well, that's what I think of Elon whenever I see him in a tux now. He's the penguin.
Elon Musk is just one bad idea away from being a supervillain.
Yeah. Just watch. If him and Bezos team up, watch out, world.
That is scary. Don't say that.
I am from the Seattle area, so I have to be a little nice to Bezos.
There is that one image of, I don't know if you remember it, it just sticks out in my memory of Elon looking out at the landed Falcon 9 booster in darkness, and he has this long coat on, and it just looks really super villainly.
He just needs a hairless cat.
Oh god.
So I've got a question for you guys, actually. If you had all the time in the world, you didn't have to worry about it, what is the thing that you would like to model the most right now? As in, like, if you didn't have to worry, you'd had all the time in the world to get as detailed as you want, what would be the thing that you most want to model right now?
I mean, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is a full starship, maybe around the moon for... What's it called again?
Dear Moon?
Dear Moon, exactly. And maybe a full mission to Mars and back. Sort of an animation like that, entering Mars atmosphere and landing, astronauts walking out. That would be really, really cool. And then maybe an animation where a base is slowly building up, sort of like the official SpaceX animation of the base being built, but even longer and cooler.
Yeah, I'll second that, Caspar. That's actually what I'm looking at working towards right now. I would say a Mars base is probably the peak modeling and peak animating that you can get within the SpaceX community. So I'm looking at making the expanding Mars base shot, and you have already seen the crewed starship I'm putting out. So I'm currently working on that for the animation. So I would say that is the main thing I would like to spend my time on moving forward.
I have an engineering background, so now Caspar, you've gotten really close to this, but the Raptor engine, I really think that that's one of the most important technologies we're going to have going forward in the future, especially with the whole getting everybody off the planet as fast as possible. I just want to have an engineering version of Raptor that I doubt we'll ever get, but like down from the blueprints from SpaceX, I mean, just every little thing in there working, every little bit detail in Raptor, which I could spend a year on. That would just be amazing. I get excited thinking about it. So Raptor engine, every little nut and bolt. That's what I'd want to do.
Just shoot Corey a message. Did you see his video?
Yeah, there's some pretty good ones. If I had all the time, that's what I would choose.
So here's a question for you guys. We mentioned Dear Moon back there just a little bit. Have any of you guys applied for Dear Moon? Because it's open to artists to inspire them, and that would be a really nice way to go as an animator on a starship around the moon. I think that would inspire you guys. Have any of you guys thought about signing up to that, or maybe even signed up to it?
It had only tangentially crossed my mind. I feel like you'd have to be sort of a big musician or something to apply for that. I hadn't in a realistic sense thought about it.
It seems pretty unrealistic, to be honest.
Have they not chosen? I kind of thought they had already chosen the artists, but I don't know about that, no.
Because, I mean, it is artists, and I know that Caspar says he felt it was reserved for musicians, but Maezawa did specifically say that he wanted artists of different genres, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I just meant, big popular artists. So it could be like painters and YouTube personalities, I guess, as well. Related to that at the end of that Mr. Beast video, that was really interesting. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think they may actually choose for him to go, but not sure. I think they haven't decided, at least all of them who are going.
I'm going to look into it.
Yeah, I would love to go around the moon.
So if anybody working on the Dear Moon project or as SpaceX is listening, these are the guys. You want to send these guys around the moon.
I could imagine doing modeling on the ship from orbit of the moon. My imagination is blowing up right now, so I am going to look into that because that sounds amazing.
Yeah, shoot me an email.
You be unwrapping around the moon, yeah.
I will.
We would all be jealous.
I'd have to get the okay from my wife, but I think if it's just a 1-week trip, I'd be allowed.
Just ask if you could get the telemetry from them to make a sort of like advanced version of mocap so you can get your coordinates and match it to a 3D model.
Yeah.
Dear Moon VR. Dun dun dun.
They're looking for ideas, so that'd be a pretty cool idea.
So let's talk about Starship. What fascinates you about Starship?
I think just the impact it will have on the industry and humans in general being fully reusable. When you think about what airplane travel did for humanity in the beginning of the 20th century, that it's just wild to think about what such a capable system could do. So yeah, I think that's what fascinates me. Obviously also going multiplanetary, which would be like one of the biggest steps in evolution for our species, but like on the big scale, it's fascinating.
Great answer. Anything to add, Eric or Nick?
Yeah, I just want to say that the first time I saw Starship, it didn't look very promising, to be honest. It was very huge and very tall, but the welding and everything looked like it was made in a garage. But now that the prototypes have evolved, I really believe in it. And I think they look really good, to be honest, yeah.
Well, it was essentially built in a garage, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was.
Not even in a garage.
Yeah, that takes me back to the first image I saw of Starship, which was the mock-up they did with the US flag on Hopper. And when they released that, I was actually working on a 3D video of a 1950s sci-fi retro little rocket. It looked so close to what I was working on. It just drew me in, and I was hooked ever since. Just if it does everything that they say it's going to be capable of doing, it's going to change the planet in ways that we can't even imagine. I'm sure you guys are aware, but we all talk about this a lot, and our families are probably tired of this, but I always like to explain how it'd be like trying to develop new jet aircraft without being able to leave the land. Like, developing technologies in space without being in space is pretty difficult, and this will let us get into space and develop technologies that I don't think we can even imagine right now. Just the free industry being able to get up there easily is just gonna do some impressive things.
That's actually a really good point. Like opening up space for living on a much bigger scale, which can give opportunities for innovation. Yeah, that's really cool.
If you guys want to come back and talk about how it's going to assist us in becoming multiplanetary, Rich does host a Monday show that focuses more on becoming multiplanetary, if you wanted to take a deeper look at that even.
Yeah, you guys are really going into that. Your last multiplanetary episode with aerobraking helped me a lot with my newest animation.
Just to clarify, the aerobraking episode was for Deep Dive. It was Mikko's show.
Yeah, that was me and Benno, and I think also Angry Astronaut and Miguel Guerrea did talk about it too on the Becoming Multiplanetary.
Oh, yeah, we did cover it a bit, didn't we? Because I remember you brought it up as a mention.
I was just going to say here, there's also just on the animation side, there's something about a large, enormous stainless steel ship that can go to space that has wings and it just falls through the atmosphere. I mean, how could you not want to animate that?
Yeah, it's kind of perfect. Like, people want to see it, and it's an interesting thing to model and animate. It's just a win-win-win again for, like, in the human species. It's so many wins.
I was curious with Caspar and Eric, do you guys rig your model to get the wings to flap and stuff like that? Have you actually rigged yours up, or are you guys just kind of free animating it if you do any of that kind of stuff?
I've just had the wings as separate models. That's what I do for everything, actually. And just have the origin point of that model where I want to rotate it about, and then have the correct rotation so that I can rotate in the correct fashion. I have struggled in the past with rigging. Like, I know how to do it, but I feel like it's unnecessary for this sort of hard surface stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, these hard surface models don't really need that much rigging. So I just keyframe the movement and have the origin point near the joints of the wings. Yeah.
Oh, very smart. I was asking that because I spent quite a while on rigging and it just didn't get the results I was hoping for. So glad to hear that.
Yeah, you can do some clever stuff where you have some empty points way off in the distance, and you can sort of make the wings track that if you want and animate it in a more procedural sense. But I actually did that with the lunar lander, when I modeled the Blue Origin, or what's it called, National Team Lunar Lander, because of the way the legs land with a lot of hydraulics and stuff. I made them, a lot of the pistons and such sort of track towards each other. And then when I moved the legs, it was all in one sweep motion instead of having to animate all the different individual parts.
And so we were talking just a little while before we started recording today, guys, about sound and, you know, how important that the sound is to complement the animations. We do have Benno back with us today on the eavesdrop. He's quite a sound-focused guy. I'm sure he'd like to know, you know, how important do you guys feel that sound is? You know, is there sort of like an entire process behind the scenes where you guys are looking at it and seeing what you've got to work with, or are you taking it apart and putting it back together? You know, like how, you know, what's focusing those sounds for you guys?
I'll start with this one. Sound for me is very important, I think. When you watch a animation that's just quiet, you just don't get the pop that you can get from sound. Even though the visuals do a lot, there's something that with timing and synchronizing sound with an animation that just adds another level to it. But that being said, sound's usually the last thing I think about when doing animations because I'm just not a sound guy. I put it in there because, like what I said, it enhances it just a little bit, and it can add to it, of course. But having a good sound person with your animations, that can make all the difference right there. So, yeah, I think that's important.
I totally agree. Sound is one of the most important things as a viewer, from a viewer perspective, and one of the last things that I think about. So I do the entire animation and rendering and post-processing with colors and such. And then I think, I don't know, maybe some sound would be good. But yeah, it is really, really important. It is definitely one of the most important things in animations. When I look at my most popular animations and the least popular, the most popular are definitely the ones with sound.
Yeah, so sound is very important. I was lucky to find some, I think it was Apollo 11 sounds from the launch, and it worked really well with the animation. It's pretty hard to find appropriate wind sounds and, releasing and docking sounds, so I've actually struggled a bit finding that.
So I have a question here that I'm pretty sure our listeners would like answered, actually. Let's say they're at home listening into this. They've seen your content and they're like, I'd really like to get into learning how to do that. What would you say would be the best sources on how to get into modeling like this at the ground floor? And we'll take it from Nick working up. So Nick, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to learning about animating, there's a lot of different options out there. There's always the school option. That's something that I went through, but it's different for everybody. That can be quite expensive. It has its hits and misses, but to be completely honest, when it comes to learning the software and learning the program, there's a lot of resources out there. YouTube can be very helpful. There's some that you can pay for. Pluralsight is a great place that you can pay. You can get free trials.
They get really in-depth, up to 4 to 5 hour classes on there. It can teach you all the different software from Blender to Maya. The number one advice I would say is time. Just put time into it and practice. Just keep at it, keep at it. You're not going to be good right away. It's going to take a while, but time is, I think, one of the most important things, is to just keep practicing.
Yeah, I actually started with some tutorials on YouTube, and I think a lot of people start with the donut tutorial from Blender Guru, and so did I. Just like Nick, I would just suggest to spend a lot of time on it. And if something goes wrong, don't make it bother you and stop just because it goes wrong. Try to find a solution or work your way around it. And there's a lot of great tutorials on YouTube. I would just suggest going that route if you just want to try it in the beginning before you take school in it, or before you start investing money into modeling.
Yeah, there's not really much else to say. I was about to suggest that donut tutorial. I haven't taken it myself because it's quite new, but it's really popular in the learning community I've seen. Yeah, my biggest advice is just make a lot of stuff, a lot of small projects, and then you think they are really bad, and then just keep going. I have a lot of small projects on my PC and a lot of rendered images from years ago that I think are terrible, and that's perfect, because that means I'm better now. And I even thought they were terrible right after making them, but that just pushed me to make more and try to make it better. And that's, if you feel like that, I think you're on the right track.
Following on from that, Caspar, you mentioned that you have quite a few small projects on your PC now. Have you ever found in future projects down the line that you've recycled some of these models into your future projects?
Well, I only started modeling rockets and such a year ago, so I haven't actually had the chance to sort of recycle really old projects like that. But I have definitely recycled stuff, and I do plan to recycle other stuff in the future. Like, I've made a scene for an animation that I'm currently doing where it's on some water and there's some clouds, and I definitely plan to reuse those assets later.
And what about you, Eric and Nick? You ever recycle any of your old assets into new projects and polish them up a little to save time?
Yeah, I've only been at it for 6 months, but I was lucky to have the Starlink satellite model ready, so I could just import it to my Starship animation file and create this full stack for the animation. So I was lucky there. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, well, we discussed earlier my Serenity model, which I put in, kind of mixed it up with some Starship stuff. I have some props. I used to be in the big prop modeling, so I random things that I have in a file that are all ready to go called Assets for the Future.
Right, I do have one question before we wrap this up. Do you have any future or current projects that you'd like to share for our audience?
Well, I just wrapped up my big Starship landing animation, which I released the other day. That was a pretty big project, so I haven't really thought about anything new other than fixing that one, of course, per Elon. So that actually should be done hopefully this weekend. We actually might feature that on What About It. We'll see. But yeah, other than that, just some random modeling projects and some side sci-fi ships that I'm working on. Nothing really big coming up for Starship.
Yeah, so I was really relieved once this animation was put out. So now my plan is just to make some random stuff before I take on another huge project like the last one. But I've already made the groundworks for a larger Mars animation. But that might take a couple of months, maybe done next year.
Currently finishing an animation of the Copenhagen Suborbital's speaker rocket. I've been working on that for a couple of months. It's sort of on the scale of what Eric did, but just for this small, tiny Danish rocket. And then obviously I'm working on Rocket Explorer, which I talked about earlier. That just had a public Steam page, so you can go and wishlist it now. So that would be awesome. Yeah, I do plan to, once the new official updated Starship design has been released on the website as they plan to, I will make a full launch and dive animation, or maybe around the moon or something like that. So yeah, I'm waiting until that new design is released, and then I will update my model and make a big animation for you guys.
This is all the time we have today, but before we end, big thanks to our guests Caspar, Eric and Nick. But would you like to tell our listeners where they can find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Caspar_Stanley, and it's spelled Caspar and then Stanley, and on YouTube under Stanley Creative.
You can find me on Twitter, ErcXspace, and now on YouTube as well with the same name.
Yeah, I'm Nick Henning 3D, pretty much all over the internet. NickHenning3D.com is where you can find my professional reels and work and pretty much all the stuff I've done in my past. I just want to thank you guys for having me today.
And thank you for coming on today, guys. It was our pleasure to have you here. And stick around in the server, and if you feel you want to join in any of the other conversations that are going on, you're always welcome to come join in the recording sessions.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. It was a blast. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It's great talking to the other animators too. I always like to hear other people's ideas.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
I've been Rich L-B, host of Becoming Multiplanetary Mondays. Big thank you to all the guests that have arrived today. So that's Caspar Stanley, that's ErcXspace and Nick Henning 3D. Big thank you for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure to have you here. It's been real interesting getting to talk shop about it as well. I've been able to geek out a little bit, and I thank you for that.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I've been Mikko. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and your favorite podcast platform. And have a great day.